I'm lucky to stand here today as the Chief Executive of a new Arts Council National Portfolio organisation, one of 8 new NPOs in the county, every single one of which is led by women. And that's quite a remarkable thing, actually, and I'm pretty sure it does buck the national trend in cultural leadership. But in some ways, I'm not surprised by it because it absolutely reflects my experience of working here in Lancashire. I've spent the majority of my 20-plus year career working in the creative industries in Lancashire, and throughout that time, I've been supported and mentored by, collaborated and partnered with a whole host of pioneering women who have been so very generous in sharing their knowledge, skill and wisdom, their successes, their limelight, their energy and their ideas with me. I've been fortunate to have been guided and encouraged by those women, and so I am absolutely committed to paying that forward to the next generation of brilliant young women creatives, not only within my own organisation, and believe me, there are many brilliant young women in our organisation who will be leading things around here very soon, but also with the next generation of graduates, with teenage girls who are taking part in the National Saturday Clubs, and with primary school girls like my daughter Emmy, who only a few years ago just wanted to dress up as Batgirl on Superhero Day, but who I encouraged, and for that read, forced, to dress up as Emmeline Pankhurst instead, and who now wants to study drama, film and politics to work towards a career in the media. I'm taking that as a small win, and every little thing helps. Everything shifts the dial, just like Bernie and I were just talking about, actually, about how one little thing can make such a difference in the life of somebody, and I think we can all do those small acts to make a difference in the lives of other women. And actually, these days, I'd very happily, if she decided if she wanted to go dressed up as Barbie, and I'd be really happy with that now. And I never thought I'd say that 8 years ago. And also to say that I'm hugely proud of our record at Super Slowway and British Textile Biennial in commissioning and foregrounding the work of so many women artists from all over the world, and of the work of Creative Lancashire in supporting so many female entrepreneurs to start and build innovative businesses that contribute so much to Lancashire's economic prosperity, and for making a point every year to celebrate the achievements of women at all stages of their careers as part of International Women's Day. But even as we celebrate the achievements of those trailblazing Lancashire creative women, we can't ignore the need to work harder to increase representation and diversify our creative and cultural industries. Too often, women, particularly those from underrepresented communities, face barriers to entry and advancement within our sector, and this is still a huge issue for us in Lancashire to overcome. We must recognise and acknowledge that women's experiences are shaped not only by their gender, but also by other aspects of their identity, be that race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, disability, or socio-economic status. For many women, these intersecting identities compound the barriers and challenges, limiting their access and opportunity further. Therefore, we must proactively seek out and amplify the voices of women from those underrepresented backgrounds, ensuring that our cultural landscape reflects the richness and diversity of our community. This means providing more opportunities for training, mentorship and professional development, as well as fostering an inclusive and supportive environment where all women feel valued and able to contribute their unique perspectives and talents. It's my fervent belief that by lifting each other up and fostering a culture of mentorship and collaboration, we can create a future where all women in Lancashire have the opportunity to thrive and succeed. So I really hope that you enjoy this afternoon's session. Ask lots of questions of our fabulous panel, some of whom I have had the privilege to work alongside over my last 20 years working in Lancashire. Make some connections with the other women here and start conversations with them, with the equally brilliant cohort of women who are all sat around you. And please walk away today knowing that you are part of an army of trailblazing women who are leading the creative revolution in Lancashire. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name's Ruth Raban and I used to work with Ed at Creative Lancashire for about 9 years, and then I moved into higher education, which is where I still am, working with entrepreneurs and creatives at Manchester Metropolitan University, which I enjoy very much. and I'm struggling to give it up. But yeah, why are we here today? Well, we're here to remember that we have an opportunity, and I think a responsibility as individuals and as groups of people to inspire that next generation, just as Jenny was talking about. Whether that's personally or collectively, we can be here through those small acts, you know, that sometimes go unnoticed. So why are we here? Because women's rights are human rights. And that's fundamentally runs through everything. If women are not involved, then there is lower productivity, lower creativity, and not the same kind of sense of diversity or inclusion that we get. So looking at the creative sector, the creative and cultural sector, although in higher education it tends to be about 60%, just a few stats, 60% women do creative courses, but within 5 years of leaving, they're not necessarily working in the sector. That has dropped down to 43%. 2/3 of the creative and cultural sector tend to be men, and those men are occupying professional occupations, whereas the women working in the sector, there's 42% are men working in professional occupations, 25% are women. And that means that those professional occupations allow them to have security of tenure, a contract over time, to develop their careers. But it also means that they earn more. So there's an inequality in the earnings that women get in the sector. And a lot of women that do work in the sector, even though they have the same qualifications as the men, end up working in part-time, freelance, project-based, flexible working, sometimes in administrative roles, and sometimes, lower paid roles. So within that context today, I want to introduce our lovely panel of speakers. We have some images to go with their introductions, just so that you can have a little flavour of their work, if you're not familiar. So Holly Ross.
Hi.
I don't know why I've got this silly chair that I've got to sit, but anyway, I feel like some kind of judge in court. Holly Ross. Anyway, okay.
Not guilty.
From the Lovely Eggs. Holly works up in Lancaster with her husband, part of the Lovely Eggs, and has been working in music since she was 15.
Yep, true.
Which is fantastic, so I know there's going to be a story there.
What are you meant to do, like, when you're doing a TV show?
Vultures coming down to attack me.
I'm Stuart Lee in a graveyard.
Like a pie in a sandwich is good.
Dad, you're in this bottle.
Oh, it's Ian Mackay. Hello.
We're meant to be presenting this, you know. That was a TV show that we made.
Yeah.
I'm not
Yeah,
really a
so-
TV person, but
Hey, you are now a musician and TV producer. So, and I should just say about Holly that she does all her music without a manager, without a record label, and without a publisher. So, you know, staunchly independent in her work. Mm-hmm. Okay. So next on our panel is Keisha Thompson, who is currently artistic director at Contact Theatre, amongst other things, but actually a writer, a performer, an artist, working at Yorkshire Sculpture Park at the moment, and is a fellow of the Royal Society of the Arts, has recently won a Dare Art Prize, which I'm hoping she's going to tell us about a bit, and has also exhibited work at Tate Modern, Blue Dot Festival, and the British Council Showcase in Edinburgh. So loads of things there. We've got images as well to go with. So I know our speakers are going to tell us a lot more about their work in a lot more detail. So Shirley May, who's at the end of the panel. Shirley has been working in poetry, performance. She's an author. She's a member of the Royal Society of Literature. She's a fellow of Manchester Metropolitan University, and is an inspiring person who co-founded Young Identity and works with, I think, is it 13 to 25-year-olds?
Right.
Yeah, encouraging them and inspiring them to become creative too. So hopefully she'll be able to tell us much more about that. We'll quickly whiz through some images.
Not all of us came on the Windrush. My mother once told me that in her old age, she travelled to England first class, ate at the captain's table and danced with Sidney Poitier on a ship called the Queen Mary. She said that dreaming was not just the pursuit of the young. I want to remind you, value your time. It runs away with your life.
That's lovely. And last but not least, we have Tina. And Tina is Artistic Director at LeftCoast in Blackpool. Sadly, she's going to be leaving quite soon, but no doubt she'll talk about that in more detail. Previously, she's worked for Culture Warrington, the Library Services, Brighter Sound, so quite a long and illustrious career working, making things happen, facilitating creativity for others. LeftCoast has got a reputation for its social engagement and encouraging women and, people from local neighbourhoods to get actively involved in the arts. So no doubt she'll be able to tell us all about that too. Some lovely examples there of women doing it. Okay, lovely, thank you. I'm going to chair this, and I want it to be quite an informal conversation. So if people do want to ask questions, please let me know. Because we're videoing it, it does mean that we need you to wait for a microphone so that we get it on tape. Do they use tape anymore? No, they don't use tape anymore. So we get it digitally recorded. We also will need to get the cameras moved around as well. But it should be informal, because I know that there's lots of women in the audience who have got a lot to contribute to this conversation as well. Okay, lovely. So what I asked my panel to think about was what inspired them. And I would like them to cast their minds back to when they were either at school or young or whenever that may be. And I guess I'm going to start with you, Holly, because at the age of 15, that's pretty young to decide that you wanted to work in the music industry, and that was kind of, you were just going to set up a band.
Well, no, I didn't want to work in the music industry.
Ah, right, okay.
I think
Explain.
When I was 15, I discovered punk rock. And punk rock is all about freedom and creativity. And as soon as I sort of discovered a world where you could do exactly what you wanted to with no rules whatsoever, no one telling you to do, that was just my complete direction. And I knew that that ethos, whatever I did in life, was what I applied to. So yeah, I've got this punk rock ethos that that's just run throughout my entire life, and I just do things differently. And that getting into punk rock made me realise that I could do what I wanted to do rather than what everyone else does, which is just get jobs that they hate and do it for 40, 50 years and then retire and die, which is not how I wanted my life to be.
That's fantastic. So how do you go about doing that? I mean, you're 15, you don't have a lot of money to do it.
Yeah.
So, what happened and how did you make it happen? And was it something that somebody kind of encouraged you, or was there a kind of moment that you think you maybe saw somebody on TV and you thought, I want to do that, or?
Yeah, well, I think luckily for me, in the 90s, which was when I was like 15, there's a lot of Riot Girl bands. There was a lot of female guitarists, there was like Babes in Toyland and Sleater Kinney and Hole. And so to see all the women playing on stage with guitar really loud was just like, well, I can do that as well. So that was great. And as to how we did it, it's just passion. And I think that with anything in art, it's all about whether you want to do it. There's a desire to do it. And if you've got no money, if you want to do it, you'll do it. And you find a way of doing it. And you just...
True.
So, and that's my ethos today with The Lovely Eggs, you know. We don't have a massive budget. We don't have a record label behind us or money or funding or anyone financing the band. But we do what we can because we want to make the stuff we want to make. So you've got to have that drive to do it.
Yeah. So I know that's resonating with all of you because you're all sat there kind of nodding. But Shirley, you know, I was reading about you, and you didn't come to writing and performing until you were in your 30s. So that's kind of interesting in that, you know, there must have been something that kind of led to that point. So could you share that with us?
Yeah, my mother was always in business, and when you come from a family that are business people, you end up having to work in the shop or the factory or the place that they are running. Nowadays, it'd be done for child labour. And so, for me, I was always in a creative environment because my dad had a factory.
Right.
And so he had a pillars and cushions factory. And so I was always about creating stuff, and I went to MMU. Well, it was Manchester Polytechnic when I went to it, and I did fashion and design, and it was because I actually felt that I was pretty stupid. You know, now we call it dyslexia, neurodiverse, but I struggled to read, and so it was one of those things where it was better for me to paint. It was better for me to create with my hands. And so writing was something that I was like, oh no, don't want to do that, because it was always a struggle. And being a creative and creating stuff with my hands is what I did. So I went into fashion. I was a fashion designer. So coming to writing at 30 was really an epiphany. I had a dream, and something came to me, just a little tiny ditty, which was, the heart is the organ that encounters pain, the place that also peace should reign. It's the place that hears, a mother hears a child's cry, and the father wants to stand up and provide. The heart is the organ that encounters pain, the place that also peace should reign. Never wrote anything more of it. Just came in my head. I woke up in the morning, that was in my head. I became a writer from there.
That's quite amazing.
And I was 34, I think, 34.
It's always nice when you weave a bit of art into the conversation as well, so thank you for that. Yeah, and did that take you by surprise, especially if at school you were kind of trying to get away from all of that? Was that moment a bit like, what's going on, kind of?
Yeah, I think the school that I went to was quintessentially English, Church of England school, and there were certain expectations that for girls. So do you remember it was called the Wendy House? Yeah. I seem to live in the Wendy House with the iron board. And I was like, somehow someone's planned for me to iron clothes. I don't iron anything now, but I was in that Wendy House ironing. And so there's an expectation that's a route that, you know, that you're going to go down. You're going to work in a factory, you're going to do this or that. Mm-hmm. And a bit like the punk rocker at the end, I kind of bucked trends as well. You know, I like to break rules. And so I think that was, it's always been in me. And so it's always going to be a bit of a revolution. I was a walking revolution. I am a walking revolution.
Lovely. Tina, what about you? Because you've been working in the arts for, well, you've worked on loads of projects and for quite a long time.
I mean, you know, I had to drive the family bread van as well, so
see?
Yeah. I think I've always been inspired by women, actually. Women have always inspired my career, and they still do to this date. You know, I've worked with Jenny, and I've got a great team at LeftCoast. And it's a constant joy to work with female creativity like that. I think we do collaboration brilliantly, and I think that's just got to be encouraged. There's still something about sisterhood that's really fantastic and empowering and wonderful. And I think collaboration is really important because it's really lonely being an artist, you know, on your own. And there's something really powerful about being able to talk about we rather than I. So I would really encourage, working with other women, either to help yourself and your practice to get a little bit further, or actually to genuinely collaborate and make something together. But my inspiration was my family, because we were dominated by formidable women. So, you know, I had an extended family, so 2 grandmas. I had a load of aunties, real, and just mum's mates, who you called auntie. And then I had my wonderful mum. And it was one of the things, the paradigm at the time is the men wear the trousers, the men are in control, and there couldn't have been anything further from the truth in my house, you know. So it was that thing of when a guitar got put in my hand, and I was about 8 or 9, all these aunties would go, you know, come in our living room, come and play, what have you been learning? And there's 2 things really, I think, about being born in the 70s that really worked to my advantage. And the first one is there was free music lessons at school, so I could have a guitar and I could have lessons. Amazing. And I could learn to sing, because Elvis Presley was my hero at that time, so I could learn to sing in this accent that was like Tennessee come via Wigan. And then the other thing that was really brilliant is that my parents experienced social mobility. I mean, they had their own business, but they grew up my dad grew up on a very poor social housing estate in Wigan. And I was just really lucky that there was this thing where they could afford to educate me, I could afford to have the music lessons, and for the first time they could have the aspiration that somebody in their family could go to university. So I'm just saying yay to the kind of strong women, because I think that is genuinely my biggest inspiration. And I think once I started to pursue that career, I really started to value the critical help that I was given with what I did. I was a singer-songwriter from the women that I met in the industry, because being a woman in music, it's really tough. I mean, especially sort of 20 years ago. So, you know, I feel your pain.
That's great, thank you. And Keisha, I know you're the youngest panel member, but you've still done loads of stuff, you know, and when did that all start, and what was it that kind of whetted your appetite, got you, you know, got your juices flowing when it came to performing, writing, and your artistic practice?
I'm really grateful in that I cannot really distinguish a particular time, because it was so ubiquitous for me. So I had a family that loved the arts. None of them would necessarily say they're an artist, but they were appreciators of it. So my mum would constantly be taking me to shows, to the gallery. They'd be getting me to sing in the living room, just anything, and just fostering that energy in me, because I had that energy. I was constantly just like running around tables and stuff, so like, we need to get this child doing something. So I was encouraged to do everything, and then I had also the privilege of being in an area, going to a school that championed the arts. So then I could do everything. I was doing choir, I was doing ballet, Indian music, African drumming, knitting, circus, anything that was going, I was there, and also doing sports as well. So yeah, it's really hard to kind of pick out a moment, because I was just in it. I was immersed. And we'd have artists come into our schools as well, and being quite honest. So, you know, they'd perform, but also we'd get to speak to them afterwards and kind of understand, like, can you be an artist? Can you be a writer and live and feed yourself? Is that a thing? And some of them would say yes, and some of them would say no. I also have to work in a shop and do these things. So it was kind of getting that sense of like, oh, right, what does it mean to be an artist? And what stuff is you doing it for yourself and for fun? And then what stuff's where it's actually like you've got to go and perform and be professional and do a commission and have a fee and all this kind of stuff. So I really got exposed to those conversations from quite a young age, which I'm really grateful for. I'd say the thing that made me feel like an artist was when I was 10 and I got published. There was a project happening in Manchester where they were encouraging young people to write about refugee experiences. So I wrote about Anne Frank. I was learning about her and just again, I was really inspired by the power of language, because I was thinking, okay, this is a little girl who lived however many years ago and in a country that's not mine, but I know who she is because she wrote it down. So that was like, right, okay, I should write stuff down. So I wrote a poem, it got published. Just seeing a published book was like, oh, right, I'm a writer. So I was just emboldened and just went into high school and was like, I'm a writer. Where's the this, where's the that? And they were just like, who is this child? But yeah, so I'd say it's really lovely hearing the experiences of the other women on the panel, because I feel like that work then foregrounded, led to a situation where I could be exposed to the arts and so many amazing artists, loads of women, and just see it as a reality right away.
So in terms of, I'm sure that this chimes with a lot of women in the audience as well. I'm sure you've had moments when something kind of, or something happened to you, or circumstances were. So how can we take what we've learned from our experiences and then kind of make the change that's necessary for some young members of the audience over there who I'm thinking, who want to get into these things? If we had a magic wand, what would we do? What could we do individually or collectively to kind of make those circumstances right for today? What could we do? You don't have to have the ultimate answer, but what would you like to do? I mean, I'll go to you, Shirley, because you've already set up Young Identity, and I kind of feel like, so you've been through that process of thinking, what can I do? How can I pay it forward? How did Young Identity come about, and, what was driving that?
Strangely enough, I've found out today from Ed and his wife that they sponsored a collective that I was an audience member in called Speakeasy. And that's amazing. I had no idea. And I was simply somebody who, like I said, I came up with this poem, came to me, and a friend of mine who was an actress in Lee, she started to look at the work that I was writing, and she was like, you need to join an organization, or you need to do something with this work. But I was, I'm a designer, that's something else. And I can't give anybody my work because I can't spell and I don't know anything about grammar and what is this, what is a metaphor, what is a simile, what is...
Hey, don't ask me.
And so for me, it was, I joined a collective that was Speakeasy, and I was an audience member, and then I ended up running it. And I was like, how did I go from being this poet to running this collective, which were predominantly men, disorganized, needed some women in there, so myself and a woman called Amanda, Yvonne McKellar, were the sort of like females in the background making the thing in the foreground happen. And I think I kind of slid into that role. And to then, I've been a part of different collectives. I was a part of a collective that is Common Word, which is a writing organisation in Manchester. It was a collective when I joined it. It's now an enterprise. And so I've always been a part of something that is not just about myself, but about a greater collective of people working together to achieve something. And so, yes, I think that Young Identity, in many ways, or words, because the organisation is actually called Wordsmith Awards, and Young Identity is the brand name, came out of those collective voices and that collective work that I've done over the years. I don't think that I could have done it without that. And the men were great, actually. They were. Some of them were good looking as well. Don't tell my husband that. Yeah.
So Tina, you've got groups that are part of LeftCoast that you're enticing in to get them involved in creative projects.
Yeah.
How do you go about doing that? How do you kind of make it accessible to them?
I think from the point of view of inclusion, what we're trying to do more and more is have longer projects, and so that there'll be a kind of lead into a project, there'll be this peak of it where it comes to fruition, and then there'll be kind of a little bit of a tail out, and then the legacy of it, because what we want to do is make sure there's lots and lots of points of access, lots and lots of opportunities for people to engage. One of the projects that was up there was Wash Your Words, which is where we took over an old housing office and we turned it into a laundry room come library. And we did that because we were chatting to some of the women on the Mearside estate who were saying that they had washing machines but they couldn't afford to put them on, and it was actually cheaper to nip down to Tesco, get a 90p t-shirt for the kid, they'd wear it all week and then they'd throw it in the bin.
My gosh.
And so with that project, because it's really important to include as many people as possible, we had these intervals whereby people get involved in the design process, or they could get involved in actually ripping down some walls and pulling out some trunking, doing some plumbing. They could design the brand, or they could use the machines, or they could be volunteers to operate it. Now it's up and running. So for me, it's about creating as many points of engagement in a project, so you don't have to hold on to this poor participant and drag them from A to B. Actually, just to let the project breathe, be part of that community, and for people to get involved and to elect what it is that they can bring to that once it's sat with them for a while and they've seen it, and there's plenty of things that they feel they can get involved with.
Yeah. So even on that kind of just basic level of come and do your washing, you know, we all have got.
You come do your washing, you end up
clothes.
lino printing or doing a few hydroponic things. Yeah, it's all good.
Yeah. And the work that you do, Keisha, does this all kind of sound very familiar in terms of the projects that you've been running?
Yeah, it's definitely about being holistic, isn't it? Understanding the barriers that would be there to stop someone from engaging with the arts or with the sector, and then just being very proactive about addressing those. But yeah, I was trying to think about what I could contribute that hasn't already been said. And I think for me, the two key things is mentoring. Yeah. I've definitely benefited from brilliant mentors, Shirley being one. When I was in Young Identity, I've always had amazing people around me just prodding me and just going, what are you up to? Come to this, go to that. And not just creative stuff. So Cheryl Martin used to take me to like Arts Council conferences and stuff. And I didn't know what was going on. But I do that now. So I'll take young people to really boring meetings and I'll go to, look, this is going to be boring. You're not going to know what's going on. Don't feel like you need to say anything, but you need to be in the room. You need to hear what the decision makers say and what they look like, how the decisions get made. They need to see you and just all that kind of stuff. So I think mentoring is really important. And whenever I'm doing a project, I'll always try and write in that I'll have young people in at some point. So if I know I'm going to have a rehearsal for a week, I'll just speak to like 2 people and go, do you want to come in on these 2 days? And they like to do what? I'm like, I don't know. But I just want you to know how it works. Okay. I want you to just see who's in the room, what a rehearsal looks like, and then you can ask questions. And I'll sort out your travel, I'll pay for your food. Yeah. And if I can, I'll try to give them something to do, because it's good to have a focus. So I'll say, I want you to be like the creative evaluator. So come in, see what we're doing, chat to a few people and write a blog about it. So that they've got something that they can reflect and go, what did I just see? And how does this respond to me and what I want to do? What would I do differently? Or if I was running a project, what would that be? So really just provoking them to think quite actively that they could be doing what I'm doing, just trying to make it as accessible as possible. And then I think the second thing that I try to do is just be really proactive about things, such as I know that there's not enough women doing technical roles. So whenever I'm working on a show, I'll try my best to make my stage manager, my sound designer, women, because I want them to get that work, but also I want other people in the room to see, a woman can do a technical job. It's ridiculous that I have to do that, but I have to show that, and then hopefully those people see each other and go, I'll get you on this next project, and that kind of thing. So it's just being really like, I'm going to change the ecology. I have the power to have like this kind of influence, but hopefully it will have a ripple effect. And just the last thing I'll say, the latest thing that I've been enjoying doing is if I see a job role or something, I'll send it specifically to women. and I'll go, look, did you know that statistically men read job descriptions, they'll match up about 50% and still go for it, whereas women will match up 80% and go, oh, I'm not qualified, and won't apply.
Yeah.
So I'm like, there's your statistic, do the job, don't ask me any questions, and then just leave it there.
No, you're so right. And we were talking about it earlier, and I'll pick up on it in a minute, but I just wanted to ask Holly, I know you don't run projects in quite the same way, but you must inspire as a role model within the music industry. People must, young women, must see what you're doing and think, I want to be like Holly.
Well, I don't know about that, but I do think it's really important to lead by example. And I think if you believe in something, it's your duty to do it that way. And if you think something's wrong, like in the industry you're in, whether it's creative arts or visual arts or music, just stand up against it. So if you don't think that's right, don't do it. Just because everyone else is doing it, you shouldn't be doing it, And we've always stayed true to that. And like one thing I remember is when I found out I was having a baby, about 10 years ago, our sound engineer said to us, all right, that's it, that's the end of the band then. And I said, are you joking? I said, you're kidding. So we looked on eBay for some seats for our Fiat Scudo. We found 3 extra seats and we got them welded in. We went down to Birmingham or whatever, picked them up in the van, took them back to Lancaster, got a welder to weld them in. We're like, right, we're going on tour. And we took our baby on tour from like 4 months old, and he tours with us. We only tour now over the school holidays. Right, so we'll only tour in February, October, May. That's why we're touring in May, because it's the half term. So it's about adapting your life, like when you have kids, things aren't going to continue as they were before, and it's stupid to expect that they will, but your life doesn't stop either. So I was like, I would die if I could not do music and tour and keep that side of me as a woman. Like, I don't know what I'd do. So that's why we do it. And the amount of people who've been in touch and said, like, wow, I can be in a band now and have a family. That's amazing that you can do that. And so I just think it's really important just to get on with it. And then sometimes maybe not even look at, I need to tell them to do that. I need to tell them to do that. Don't tell anyone to do anything. Just do what is right for you. And then if that's a thing that other people think is a good thing, they'll get in contact with you or whatever. And I remember a band called Heiku Salute, they got in contact with me and they'd had a baby. And they were like, how do you do it then?
Yeah.
And I was like, right. What you need. And because they were on like a budget like we were, we don't get, it's not like you're staying at the Hilton every night and on a massive tour bus, It's like, okay, this is practically what you need, You need Milton. In the travel lodge at night, you can't do you've not got the microwave to put your milk bottles in, and you need Milton. Yeah. And all these little practical things. Yeah. And you can share sort of your experience with them. And hopefully they did go on tour and did some gigs.
Yeah.
And they're inspiring the next generation of mums.
You've got a kind of format there, haven't you, that you could blog about or whatever?
Well, yeah, it's just like life doesn't have to stop because they tell you it does.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you, don't believe anything that they tell you. It's just rubbish, you can do what you want. That's been my experience anyway.
Yeah, sure. Just to not believe everything they tell you, Shirley and I were talking earlier about women not necessarily knowing their worth. And you told a little story about that I thought was worth kind of sharing with everyone.
Yeah, so we at Young Identity also run a little agency. We don't say that we're agents, but lots of people come to us for our poets to perform in different places. They've been on TV, they've been all over the place. And then we did a little exercise about a few years ago. We had a whole new cohort of young writers in, because Keisha's a part of what I call the founding cohort, the first cohort, but we've had lots of little different ones. And I just asked, what do you think your worth is? What do you think your value is? And I asked people to put what they wanted to go out at different price points into a hat. And all of the girls in the group undervalued themselves. So if you were going to go do something for, I don't know, a 10 minutes standing on the stage or whatever, the girl would put £75 in, the lad would put 100. And so, and at every point, if you're going to do a massive workshop, you're going to be out all day. What do you think you want to be charged? 150 the girl put in, the boy put in 250. So it was really these and huge differences in money. But as a collective, we've always gone, okay, let's find out where people think what their value is and their worth is. And we were able to say, this is what you said that you want, but this is what this... They're going in the same school as you. They're going to be doing the same job as you, but you think that you're only worth this. No, you're not. You're absolutely worth the same money, and just instilling that you're going to get the same money. And even as a practitioner, and Keisha can adhere to this, we used to do lots of schools, and I would pay my young people exactly what I got paid, because you're in the class, you're delivering in that space. Why should I be paid more than you? And so that's what we've always tried to run our organisation on, is that actually it's your creativity, not mine, and that's what you should know your value and your worth. Yeah. But it was really horrible to see women undervaluing themselves like that.
And it is just endemic, isn't it? And that people will just be grateful to be asked to do something, and will then, put loads of effort and energy and themselves into something, but still not understand what it's really worth. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, talking about money specifically, do you feel that it's the responsibility of the funders, the arts funders like the Arts Council, especially now they have their new investment principles, equality, diversity and inclusion being one of them, what should they be doing really? What message would we like to send in terms of, what the funders and the policymakers, that are in charge of the funding for a lot of these projects, what needs to change there, do you think? Tina, I'll come to you for that.
I think there's a lot of demystification that needs to happen, and there's always room for more investment. Especially, I talk to a lot of people who apply for developing your creative practice, and they feel that they couldn't have written a better application, and they're still not getting funded to do their work. And that's probably got a lot to do with not enough funds in that pot initially, and then it being oversubscribed. But I think there's a responsibility for everybody in that as well, and it's like, and I know Jenny's done this too, you've sat with hundreds of artists because you really do want to help them progress their career. And the reason why being able to have critical conversations with artists is so important is that if you can't articulate your work, and if you almost don't understand your process yourself, it's really difficult for you to go out there and communicate that to other people, and for there to be a worth and a value attributed to it. Whereas if you understand yourself and what you're creating, you can actually then sit in your shoes and go, you know what, it takes this amount of time to do this. My process is this. This may happen, this might not happen because this bit's experimental, whereas this bit's much more structured. And therefore, it's easier to fund something when it feels like there's a vision for it, even if there's not a plan, and even if there's not an outcome, there's a process and there's a vision for it. And I think it needs more people in the sector to enable artists to do that. And sometimes it's magic and it's special, and we don't want to attribute adjectives to it. But other times it's really useful to say, I am worth this because this work, is of value.
Yeah. What's been your experiences of trying to seek out funding for the people that you're working with, part of the young identity community or contact theatre, or, what is it similar to Tina?
I think that for us, we never started looking for funding until really about 5 years ago. We became a charity about 5 years ago. And it's really funny because another funny story, because we had a group of Bolshe young black people. Keisha was one of them, and
No,
we were with an organisation, and they were all going, "Yeah, we can do it ourselves. We don't need that organisation. Shirley, come, we're going to do this. We're going to build an empire." And I went, "All right then," and I left my job and followed after these little and then they all buggered off and got jobs. And I was then like working with a young man called Reese Williams, and Reese was one of the noises in my head saying, "We can do this ourselves. We don't need anybody else." And we went out. We were teaching in schools, and schools were paying us to come in, and we were just paying that money back to ourselves, not with no idea that we were going to go and get funding from Arts Council or anywhere like that. We were very independent in terms of the money that we were receiving, and then sort of like, so we were earning our own money, but we were working like ridiculous hours.
Stupid hours.
Yeah, still working them, I'm afraid, because when you work for yourself, I don't know, I'm not quite sure how to turn off. I'm trying to figure it out, but we worked really long hours.
Yeah, it's standard.
And then my daughter, who is the ED of my company, went, "We deserve an MPO. We've done this, we've done that." And she was like, "We are a delivery service for every arts organisation in the city." So we work for Brighter Sounds, we work for Manchester Histories, we work for Contact, we worked for all of these different organisations delivering their programme, but we were not the people who were benefiting from knowing that we could pay our mortgages or get a loan or do anything. And she was like, "We're going to be an MPO," and we're an MPO.
Yay!
And that was sheer determination. And my group is a collective of black and Asian women and women of colour that run that organisation. Some of them are family members, and some of them are not. And those were the women who were willing to work for nothing or very little to make that thing happen. And sometimes it's about having a team around you that can see that vision, see where you want to take that thing, and then the rewards come afterwards and the funding comes afterwards.
Yeah.
But we decided we weren't going to deliver for anybody else. We wanted to deliver for ourselves.
Yeah, brilliant. But, hard work.
Hard work.
Say, and you do have to work flat out all the time because you can't switch off because you think that next opportunity might come in the next 10 minutes. So, there's always that in the background. Holly, the way you're funded is obviously different to arts projects, but how do you make money out of music when you've got no manager and no record label and, do you have to sell the tickets yourself or, what do you do?
We go on tour.
Yeah.
And we sell out tickets to shows, and we sell records. We just do it ourselves.
Yeah.
If you couldn't make money out of it, there wouldn't be all these record labels and managers and promoters out there doing it. You can make money out of it. And we just cut out all the people, that take a cut or whatever. We just do it ourselves.
So what does that involve, what in terms of, we've just all been nodding about working flat out when you're a freelancer, because I've been a freelancer myself, so I know, you're just working till 2 a.m. and then you've got to get up and start again kind of thing. What does that involve in the music industry? Because that's kind of very different kind of...
Well, it's like obviously writing and recording your own material and then getting it manufactured at a record pressing plant and then getting artwork together for it, music videos.
I know it's obvious to you, but it ain't to me.
Yeah,
booking
a tour with the promoters,
yeah.
Booking all the hotels to stay in. But we love living like this because we make it work and we can pay our bills. We don't have a second job. This is our job, the Lovely Eggs. We pay our mortgage with it. We pay all our bills with it. And it's self-sufficient. And I think actually that's really important in art and in music to be self-sufficient. And my personal view is that artists rely too much on funding these days. And funding is actually quite a poison chalice. It can actually taint your art to the point that you're writing these funding bids like, oh, we want a funding brief on this, okay. It's not really what I want to do, but I'm going to chase the money and do that. And so you never really stay true to your art. You're always like doing other people's briefs, jumping through hoops to chase the money. And to me, that wouldn't, if I was an artist doing that, it wouldn't fulfill me in any, it's like being a wedding covers band. I guess that's the sort of analogy for me, is just to play cover versions at people's weddings would be the same thing. And that's like, you know, when you're jumping through these funding hoops. So I think funding can actually be a very poison chalice. And it's, for any artists out there, you know, if you really want to go to bed at night and sleep easy and feel good about what you do, you know, is kind of keep pure to your idea of what you want rather than chasing the funding. Because it's just like any other job otherwise.
Somebody just waved because they're desperate to ask a question. So,
oh God.
Is it switched on?
Yeah. So I was just wondering, like, why do you have to chase through hoops? Like, what is it within the system of like funding, which means that, you know, you can't dedicate your time to your craft, I suppose, is what I was going to ask. And this is like open to everybody, I suppose. Like, why is that? And why are we like, why do we have to compromise? Because I think as creatives, we have to compromise a lot, just generally. So, like, what's that about?
Sorry, what's your name?
Julia.
Julia. Okay. So does anybody, I mean, I saw Jenny's face then, because I know that she's constantly looking for funding. So I don't know if you want to pick that up or if somebody else.
I'd like to just pick that up, just to say for me, and I'm not someone who applies to funding very much, do you know what I mean? So but it's something that I know a lot of my colleagues in the arts have to do to get money and stuff. And I'd like to see funds much more open, especially when it comes to art, rather than, oh, you have to do, you know, a project based around 17th century maritime history. You know, like, just do it on that's the whole point of being an artist. But I'll throw it out to other people on the panel here, because I guess you're more brief prescriptive, but that's how I would prefer to see much more open things. Of just like, you're an artist, you're great, we're just going to give you a load of money and just do what you do.
Yeah, would be nice.
There's value in that, I think.
You both look like you want to jump in, Shirley and Tina.
So I've been at both ends. I've done what you've done. You know, I've gone, I don't want anybody controlling me. I don't want to fill out a stupid evaluation form. And also, we used to have a saying at Young Identity, could you give me enough funding for those who are at risk of being excellent? Because all of the funding pots, you've got to be at risk at something, you know, you're at risk of breathing. And so, you know, give me some money for being at risk of being excellent. These young people that I work with are excellent young people. So I've been at the other end of, I don't want your money. But as the business grew, as the organization grew, it was really important for me to be able to offer the young people that I work with pipelines into the creative industry, into the sector, and I felt that they needed to be paid for the work that they do, and I really believe that's really important. But funding comes, it's a poison chalice. It comes with illuminate. It comes with IPs. It comes with these ridiculous SWAT things that you have to do that, you know, I'm like, what is this? I just want to go out and get some young people who enjoy art, that want to paint, that want to draw, that want to create, that want to make pictures and draw, and make beautiful buildings. And that's what I want to do. But who's going to pay for that paint? Yeah. Often it's not the community, and the young people that I'm working with, or the communities that I work with, don't have the money to buy that paint. So I have to go to the Arts Council or the local council or to a businessman and say, can I have 10 tons of paint to paint a building? So I've got to get it from somewhere. Mm-hmm. So it is a poison chalice, because it actually does kind of control you a little bit. And I really hate being controlled. I told you I'm a revolutionary. Yeah. But then there's also, how do you offer progression pathways? How do you employ someone? How do you give people money? If without it, I don't know.
Oh, sorry, can we get the microphone to you quickly? I know there's another question over here, but
it was just more around like who sets the agenda, basically. Like who's deciding what gets created, I suppose. What's valuable, what's not valuable, really.
Sorry, I'm going to shut up because I can do this.
Well, I could, I mean, you've got to remember that this is our taxes as well that they're spending on these funding.
When artists come to me and go, right, I need some funding, and I'll go, well, what do you need? Because all funding is money. So what actually do you need? Because with funding it's money. Money's emotional. Emotion, around money causes people to get terribly upset, breeds competition, all this kind of stuff that's not useful. So what do you need? What is that money going to give you that you haven't got today? And if it is resources because you need 2 miles of frog tape, which is what that is, can Toolstation sort of resolve that issue? Because that's going to tour all the way around the country, and around Blackpool, not the country, and it will appear in the local newspaper. Would Toolstation provide the tape? It's like, that's a very crude example. What do you need the money for? Who else can help you get to those resources? And if it's mentoring, or if it's something that somebody else can provide, then it's my job in that situation to try and find routes to people that's going to help that artist. But it's not about money, it's what do you need the money to do.
I don't know if that helps.
Sorry, that was a bit bossy.
I hear what you're saying in terms of there are gatekeepers, aren't there? The funding is there because it's, the nation contributes through taxes for that funding to be there. And somebody is the gatekeeper deciding who gets it and who doesn't. We won't name any names today as we're going to be on video, but I know we've got another question, which is great. Thank you.
What inspired you to do this job?
What inspired me personally, or the whole panel?
Everyone.
Sorry?
Everyone.
Everyone, okay. What inspired you to do your job?
I guess just seeing other women playing guitar in bands and going to bands in gigs in Lancaster and seeing people my age on stage and thinking, that looks brilliant, and listening to music and going, I want to make that sort of music. So it's just stuff you're into, just wanting to do it.
You were starstruck?
Not really, no. You can't, no. Not
you
starstruck at all. I don't think you get in it.
The opposite.
Yeah, no. I wanted to become involved in the scene.
Right, okay.
Rather than being starstruck. I saw bands in Lancaster that were playing, 100 capacity venues, and it was brilliant, and everyone was swapping ideas and, talking about new bands and listening to new bands. And I wanted to be part of that scene and do my own band. But yeah.
Does that scene still exist to an extent?
Not as much as it did, and that's partly because of Lancaster Music Co-op, because that's what everything hinged around at the time. And that's been closed for a couple of years now, and we're having a big renovation project on it. And Lancaster Music Co-op's like a rehearsal rooms and a recording studio. So all the bands in Lancaster back in the day just practice there, record there, put out, albums, demo tapes. It was all coming out of there. But yeah, we're doing the building up. It's a massive thing. So we're closed at the moment. But once that gets back open, which we're hoping is going to be next year, everyone's going to come back to it. It's like a magnet for.
So is that hence your pain around the funding thing? Is because you've got this building that you're going to get together?
Not at all for Lancaster Music Co-op, because we are obviously Music Co-op is getting funding for that, but that's a project-based, capital-based thing. My bugbear is just as an artist. I really do believe that either visual artists or any artist in the field should just be paid an amount of money to explore what's inside them, which is magic. And they shouldn't be it shouldn't be prescribed on a brief like it has to be this, else we're not going to give you the money. Because otherwise, you have to go and do that, and you really want to do this, and you should just let people walk down the road that they were born to walk down them and support them financially while they do it.
So, what inspired you?
It's hard, because it was like, what inspired me to do this job? I was thinking, which one?
Yeah.
Because I do loads of different things. And when I was in my early 20s, I knew that I couldn't function not doing the arts. I was like in uni studying philosophy and politics, and then went back and was studying to be a maths teacher. But whilst I was doing that, I was still working on a solo show. I was doing poetry gigs, and they were like, why are you doing this? I was like, I have to. So it's never felt like an option. So because I knew that I had to do art, I was like, I've got to find ways to pay myself and be funded. I've got to make it my job. But I always say to people, I've come into the arts from the side. I've not got any formal qualifications. It's ridiculous, I suppose, that I'm running a venue, but I'm not trained in any way in terms of the arts because I've got so much experience. And I suppose I've just been grateful in that I've developed my kind of entrepreneurial skills and my negotiating skills to be able to just be quite proactive and put myself in spaces and go, this is what I can do, this is my body of work, this is how much I'm worth, pay me for it. So then I was able to fund my own work because I'm then in control of my income. I can then reinvest in my own work, make more work, people see that work, and then I get commissions. Yeah. So it kind of just builds in that way. So I always do say to young people, invest in your own work. Yeah. You know, you might save up a few £100 to buy some trainers. Don't do that. Pay your friend to film you, because then you've got a film. Because when you're going in for applications, they want to see something. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. They want to see what can you actually make, what do you do? And then you don't have to play this game of like, I'll do this, I'll do that to fill this brief because people are interested in you. That's the thing that I've come to find and been really grateful in, that I've had all these open-ended commissions because people just trust that they'll like what I make. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's the way that I've kind of come to being in this position and taking up these different roles. I was just inspired by the people around me being very honest that it's not easy and that you're going to have to spin loads of different plates. So I was just like, right, go for it then. Let's start spinning these plates. Jenny's got a question.
Do you want all the panels or to know what all of them were inspired by quickly? Sorry, I didn't hear that.
You can do as many, I don't really mind.
Okay, we'll keep it brief and then we'll go to Jenny, but Tina and Shirley.
I was inspired by Maya Angelou.
Angelou.
I was inspired by Sonia Sanchez. I was inspired by a poet called Sonny Patterson. Both Keisha and I met Sonny Patterson at Brave New Voices in the United States of America. And she was doing a poem about, New Orleans and the it was the time when they had a hurricane, so the whole place was devastated and has never recovered. I was inspired by their work, and that's what made me want to be a poet. There's a poem that goes, I am a woman, phenomenally phenomenal woman. That's me, and that's by Maya Angelou. I was like, I'm a phenomenal woman. So it was listening to female poets who were saying to me that you can be this thing, and you can be creative, and you can aspire to great things. And my mother, she was great, my mum.
And just on that tip about inspiration, it's like when I was invited to come and do this today, I kind of checked you all out, been on your websites and everything. The thing that inspires me, actually, is seeing other people being inspirational and being industrious as artists. And I know that's not a terribly sexy word to use in terms of creating things, but it's like, I went to the World of Egg when I visited your website, and I saw you put on mustaches on when you were doing your spoken word, and it's like, I'd seen your beautiful pictures with your domino, and I kind of get how you're all doing your craft. And that's the thing, because it's like, to be inspired, you have to be around people with ideas and energy, and who are positive about creating art and not negative about it, not be down about it, because everything you do is a wonderful thing, and you're doing it. And there's something about an artist being prolific, where they make things and sometimes they're rubbish, and they make things and sometimes they're brilliant, but they have to do. And being around people that do and make work, I think that's really, really inspiring. That's why I really, really implore people to be around other positive people and other creative people. And when I say creative, they're just doing.
That's fantastic. So thank you very much. You all talked about community and network and inspiration from other people, which was lovely. But Jenny, was that okay, by the way? Yes? Yeah, okay.
I wanted to say something a little bit in defence of public funding for arts, really. Because I feel like
Really?
it's a bit of a bashing, and that's weird from me, honestly. But I do think there's something about the principle of public funding for arts that's really, really important. And that's not to take away from your point, because I do totally agree that artists should be given the space and the time to make what they want to make and be the artists that they want to be. But ultimately, I think we're really privileged in this country to have a public system for funding the arts. And is it perfect? No. Is it distributed equally and equitably and fairly? No. And are there massive, massive problems with how the application is, don't get me started on the Grantium system and all of those kinds of really problematic issues. But the fact is that in other societies, in other places where there is not that public funding system for the arts, what you get is a bunch of rich white blokes deciding what art gets paid for. And I don't want to live in a world where it's rich white blokes deciding what art I get to see and what art gets made in the world. And I think that's we still have a fundamental problem with the system that we've got, but it is the system that we've got. And what we need to do is make sure that we are empowering and teaching and developing young women particularly to be the artists who can access that funding and who can make a case for the art that they want to make, not to respond necessarily to briefs, but to be able to articulate their own vision for their own projects and what they want to make and have that funded publicly. And the only way we're ever going to change that and level the playing field completely is to probably look at a system like a universal basic income kind of system in the country, which pays people a certain level, and then you can choose to be that person, and that's what you want to do, and you can make that art. And if you then want to go and make art that is about community empowerment and engaging more people, that isn't a kind of art that you can sell, to some, you can do that too. And I think until we fundamentally look at like the system, then that's where we've got the problem. And we need to cling to these kind of public systems of funding, because if we lose them, honestly, I think we would live in a much less rich and wonderful world of culture.
I was going to say we would live in a very grey community, and for me, the system that you're talking about, Germany has a similar system where you can go off and be a creative and do your thing, and it's not about ticking that box that says, I'm going to work with pregnant women over there, so I'm going to get the pregnant women money, or I'm going to work with the kids who are at risk of county lines, so I've got to go and work with those, like I said, at risk of being excellent, give me the money for that. And I think that having a system that's very similar to the German system, where you are paid for your work, but you're being industrious, you're making sure that you're selling that work, you're making sure the work is being seen, you're not on this money and you sat back and you're like, oh yeah, I'm an artist. But you're actually in your art and you're given that moment to be that thing. Yeah.
Can I just say something really quickly as well? I think, going back to what you're saying about engaging with the system, the public funding system, is sometimes it's fear and sometimes it's forgetting that, the Arts Council, for example, it looks like this big behemoth or whatever, but it's just people. I worked for them for a year and a half. There was a maternity cover role, and I was like, I'm going to get in there and see what's going on. And I went in there and I was like, they're all like us, and they're all saying what we're saying, and half of them are artists, and half of them want to do stuff differently and can't do it. It's like, okay, that's interesting, that's frustrating. What are we doing then?
It is, because it's a government organisation as well, and that's, so it behaves like a government organisation, which is not agile or flexible or intuitive. It behaves like a big, solid department, that, and it takes ages to make the changes.
But it's good to get in and know it, because then you can be on the outside and challenge it. So I know examples where people do things differently, and I interact with the Arts Council differently now that I've come out on the other end. So just to give an example of some things, I know, for example, Slung Low, based in Leeds, run by Alan Lane. during the lockdown, they ran as a food bank. And he was like, I'm not bothered about the evaluation. I know what I need to be for my community. This is storytelling. It might be that this doesn't look like a theatre show or whatever, but at the end of the day, my theatre right now needs people in it, using it in a different way. So I'll tell that story later. He just wasn't bothered.
Yeah.
So it's just not having that fear. And I'm always just like, this is evaluation fodder. Like, I went into contacts and I put them all on a 100-80-100 model. So they're all on 4-day week. And I had to just go back to the Arts Council and like, yeah, we're going to be doing less. And we're going to get stuff wrong because they're all faffing around and don't know how to manage their time now. They've got one less day. Even though they're really grateful, they're also like, oh, I've got too much work. And I'm like, yeah, you had too much work before. So this is just us really pushing that and going, we can't sustain this. This model doesn't work. And we're going to show you that now.
Yeah.
And then the last example is I was the chair of a radical funding body called Future Ventures Foundation. It used to be based in Cumbria. It was Lantern House. They had their funding cut. And they were like, do you know what? We're going to take this money and we're going to set up and we're going to just last for 7 years. We're not going to try to go beyond that. We're not going to try to keep going. We're just, for 7 years, we're going to fund artists differently and show trust. And we just did different ways of recruiting every year, gave artists money. They didn't know what was going on because they were just like, what, we just do it. And we're like, yeah, go for it. And just tell us what you did after.
Yeah, but they were shocked.
Yeah, they're just like, oh, we're not used to this. So it's like, you can do it differently. And then we've got a whole 7 years of evidence and booklets and events and a cohort of people to go, look, this is how your money can be spent. So it's going back to what you were saying, just like, just do it differently, show them it can be done differently, and then put that in your evaluation.
Yeah. Tina, you're doing lots of nodding, and I know that you do People's Pantry, which must have chimed with what Keisha was saying about food banks and...
Yeah, I mean, we operate, our core funding comes from Arts Council for Creative People and Places grant. And we're very lucky because that is an action research grant. So in some ways it's a real privilege, which is why we mustn't procrastinate, because I think procrastination, for artists often can be about fear or confusion, but I think if you're an organisation like ours and you procrastinate, I think that's a privilege to do that, and you need to sort of ask yourself some serious questions. So I think the joy of being action research is that you learn by doing, and we absolutely have a process, we absolutely have a practice. It's taken 10 years for that to really understand itself, to the extent where I know that I am leaving that organisation. But the thing that it is a practice, so it can withstand anybody leaving, whether it's me or anybody else in the team, because we created it together. And I just think then what you're saying is there can be more trust, and there can be less bureaucracy, and it can just be a lot more fluid. And people go to us, but I don't get, why is one pot? Why are you distributing one pot? So how's that art? How's a laundrette art? But it's the thing about engaging in something with an artistic process and working with artists, because artists are brilliant because they see this thing through a kind of creative lens that other people don't quite see things through. And if you get the right artists with the right project and the right people, things that would ordinarily and very worthily be community development suddenly gets elevated into play. And it isn't then about giving people food and giving people a pan to cook in it. It's about being in this club, and you come to this club and you get your pot, and we swap recipes, and we swap stories about the heritage of those recipes in that neighbourhood, and we swap tins of food, and we print tote bags, and the volunteers write labels, and we all go shopping to Tesco together. And that's the community that's around that project that stops it feeling like a food bank. But it's hard work because you learn by doing, so it is imperative to practice, I think, as an individual and as an organisation. And then once you know what you do, people can trust in it and go, yeah, I'm not quite sure what will come out of it, but whatever it is, it'll be brilliant.
Have we got any more questions from the floor? Or is everybody feeling a bit shy or want to contribute? I was just, people are leaving. Come back. So that makes me feel that we should maybe wrap it up if we haven't got questions from the floor. We could, on my sheet I've also got stuff about education which we could launch into, but I kind of feel like it feels like we're naturally coming to an end, unless there's something that the panel want to share that they feel that they haven't said. Oh, we've got a question. Lovely.
Hello.
Hello.
I feel obliged to ask questions considering I'm the only male in the audience.
Okay, as a token man.
Just let you know, if you are filming, can you get my left side? It's a better side. Thank you. No, just linked to the question you mentioned about education. Obviously, we're going to be launching a project. It's very inspirational, by the way. And Shirley, you're one of my inspirations as well. Just a comment first before I ask the question. I think I've been I work at a secondary school as an extended service coordinator, but I'm also artistic director of an organisation called Respect and Dignity Arts. And we work predominantly with young people. And one of the initiatives we're launching this summer is working predominantly South Asian girls and getting them engaged with arts, but linking them to really inspirational women. Because the research, I'm getting really nervous actually, this question. Because the research that I've looked at as well, that particularly young Asian girls from the South Asian background, minority backgrounds, are really underserved and underrepresented in the arts.
Yeah.
And in the workforce in general. When we looked at the statistics, I think the last time I looked, 14% in terms of nationally, women are in employment from the South Asian background. But in the Northwest, it's 25%. So we're way behind. So there's an issue here, and there's various factors. So the question I'd like to put to the panel is how, going forward with this project, how do you think would be best with your experience when we come to engaging with this particular demographic of young people? How best do you think it would be to approach that?
Wow. Who would like to take that?
You're asking me a question. You're asking me that question. You're looking directly at me.
Looks like it's you, Shirley.
I think it's about making sure that they've got good role models, people who are in that 25%. So I work with Respect and Dignity Arts. We got a Paul Hamlin Foundation grant, and it was that grant that they used to have that was about sharing good practice. So we've been working with WACAR to create this project that is going to stand alone. We sent poets down to you, so people like the Brown Hijabi, inspirational writer and performer, to come and work in that group. But having people who look like you and reflect you in organisations always is an encouragement to get people to say, I can do this, this is something that I can tap into. So I think it's about making sure that if you're having a mentoring program, that actually it isn't full of people that look like me, but Asian women who are inspirational so that they can be inspired to do that work. So who are those people? It's Amjad Malik, it's Shamshad Khan, it's, give me a list as a name, list of women. I'm not saying that you can't learn off a white woman or a black woman, but if you really want the project to work, you have to have people who also reflect yourself. That's good mentoring, because it gives people what am I looking for the word? You're seeing role models of yourself, so that makes you think, I can do this. But also, don't be afraid to ask, because there are people who will, when we asked the Brown Hijabi to come and do some work with you, I called it the Brown Hijabi because the name's just got out of my bloody head. Excuse me, children in the house. But she came for, I went, I know what her price was, but I was like, I can't pay you that price. Would you come anyway? And she went, yes, for this group. And it's about tapping into your networks and making sure that actually people are working with people who reflect them. That's what I believe anyway, good mentoring. It's not just about, looking out and thinking, oh, that looks great over there, I'm going to do that. But
can I just add on a little example?
Yes.
I think it's about cultural nuance, cultural literacy, in terms of not pigeonholing and targeting people all the time. So I very much think that reflection is important. So you should be able to look at a program and think, okay, there are people like me in this program, or there are stories that are linked to my heritage in this program. That's very important. But I think also it's about just making sure that your space, your venue is accessible so that people just come on their own terms and then they decide what they like or they want and they want to book. They don't want you to go, oh, this show's about this, come and see this, and then don't turn up again. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
self-determination.
Yeah, and it's little things. And it's like Shirley was saying, just ask people. So we run a program at Contact called Recon that I was on, where it teaches you how to be a young producer or programmer. And we had a young woman on that in that group last year who identifies as Muslim, and she was like, I want to see more events that are dry events, because it's not just about me going to a venue and there being soft drinks on offer. I don't want to be at an event where there's alcohol being sold at all.
Fair enough, yeah.
And we were like, oh, cool, all right, yeah. So we just tried some dry events.
Yeah.
And it was really great. And it was lovely to see the kinds of people that were coming to that. And it's not just people from the Muslim community coming to that, but it's being very deliberate of like, this is a night where we're not selling alcohol, and having to tell some people who are turning up going, I want a glass of wine, you're not getting that today.
Yeah, yeah.
That's not on offer today.
Go home then.
Yeah, and just being really clear as to like, why we're doing that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's just, there was nothing particularly to change about the programme, but the building feels different. We're making a statement going, I see that this thing makes you feel more comfortable and want to come out, so come out.
Yeah, it's about sensitivity. Anyway, one last question, and then you're all going to be rewarded with a performance from Shirley, so don't leave. Okay. Is it working?
Hi. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just a comment rather than a question, if that's okay, Ruth, yeah?
Yes, of course.
And it's with regards to the last question.
Yes.
And it's that quite often, if you actually look at successful projects that have already been delivered in this light, and my project that I'm thinking of at the moment was one that I actually did in a secondary school in the east of Lancashire. The majority of the girls there who wanted to participate in this project, which was in the arts, were female Muslim girls. And by latching it together with a national group of walkers, ramblers, or whatever word you want to use, we could get funding to go out into the countryside and sit with 15 girls and draw. They had not been into the countryside to draw. They didn't even know how to draw, because to them, to go into the countryside was to sit in the closest park that they had nearest to their homes. And they just thought it was absolutely wonderful. But then what we did when we brought the information, the visual information back into the school, was to make sure that the project developed in line with what the kids wanted. So we asked the kids, what's the next step? What would make you happy? Let's forget the curriculum, as much as we could at that time.
Yeah.
And then let us think, how can we interpret this drawing that we've done? Can we do it in some sort of textiles? They didn't know what textiles were or how to make the textiles. And then what do we do when we've done this printing? Basic printing, it didn't really matter, because they were only sort of like, year nines or whatever they were. Let's make a garment out of it. It didn't have to be, I think it's gone.
You've got.
It didn't have to be sewn beautifully at all. It could be stitched together. And following that, we managed to get a mayor to come in and make comments on their work. So I think by starting off with a small project, but letting the kids drive it themselves, something which is huge and can form part of their GCSE portfolio that they can, put in. Just a suggestion.
Thank you. Oh, somebody's trying to get a sneaky extra one in, but quick one. Is it a question or a comment?
Yeah, I think I found everything that's been said today really inspiring, and I can identify with a lot of it. My question is really, where is all this going on? You know, I'm based in Chorley, and I'm not aware of any kind of creative hub in Chorley where people in the arts of, you know, every type of the arts get together and can share ideas and everything like that. Is there any...
Well, Creative Lancashire would be my first port of call. Because the website features a lot of the things that are taking place across the county. And, you know, from there will be networks, LeftCoast in Blackpool, British Textile Biennial, the Making Festival. There's, as Jenny mentioned, so I would talk to Jenny at the end. She might be able to give you a few tips.
Okay.
And also, yeah, the Creative Lancashire website.
That's fine. Okay, I will do.
So before we all leave, Shirley is going to recite a poem for us.
And I'm just going to say, if it's not happening, Chorley, make it happen. You can do it.
Yeah. Yeah, start your own.
So I'm at that age now where you do this. You know, you put it on to see your faces, take it off to read. This is called Tomorrow. We stand in all our yesterdays where the valiant had once stood, where heroes now stand. We will not flinch nor fall, for we have come too far, so we battle like queens should. Mothers called to combat, like the battalions of our families, all those who would not lie down while others took possession of their rise and their fall. Spirited like my mother's mother and her mother before, I did not yield ground, but braced myself for the journeys in the hulls of tall ships to distant shores. Bejeweled cargoes of victors and brave women, we are the jet black, fabulous jazz of isosceles. We stand in all our yesterdays where the valiant once stood, where heroes now stand. You set a path for us to ascend, to find the very best in us as we enter the city gates. We are a people that have battled against those who would try to defeat us. You made us strong. You gave us your voice. You left us your song. You told us to rise on the dawn and to overstand the storm. You made us spirited. For we are Kenya, and we are Egypt. We are Senegal, and we are Rwanda. We are Mali, and we are Libya. We are Madagascar, and we are Nigeria. We are Jamaica, and we are Barbados, and we are Trinidad. We people are called, and we are not afraid. So we stand in all our yesterdays where the valiant once stood, where heroes now stand, and we claim all of our tomorrows in this, our victory. I stand in all our yesterdays where the valiant once stood, where heroes now stand. Thank you.
Can I say thank you to all the panel for their contribution, but that was beautiful. Thank you, Shirley. It made me go all goose pimply. That was wonderful, so thank you. Yeah, and I hope thank you for coming and sitting on quite hard seats for a long time on this kind of rainy, blustery day. We're ahead of the curve because International Women's Day is not till the 8th of March, so this will be edited together and released for that. Have an inspiring International Women's Day, everyone, and thank you so much for everyone for coming. Another applause, I think. Thank you.